Exciting
All
stuff.
right, well, I think we're ready to get started. So we're here with Tiffany Lederle, who wrote the article Breaking the Mold, Women in Media Stereotypes. Karina, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so we wanted to know, so the focus of our project isn't like 100%. We're supposed to kind of build it off of this interview. So I guess to like kind of lay the foundation for that, we wanted to know like what are you currently doing for a living? Like your job.
Absolutely. So I'm actually the Chief Operations Officer, the COO, for a large global federal contracting firm. So we do a variety of things, facilities management, environmental abatement, building automations, and a host of other things, including AI integration for a wide variety of government agencies. And we have projects pretty much across the globe right now, which is super exciting. In addition to that, I also have am fostering an AI startup company where we have built an AI application that will help public housing authorities and housing agencies across the country implement better housing quality standards. In addition to that, I also have a consultancy that is where you guys found the article. It's the I write a newsletter called Woman-Owned Small Business Campus with an intent to help empower women in leadership and entrepreneurship. That's kind of a little bit about what I'm currently doing.
Like your background, did you take women's studies when you were in school? And was it something that you were always interested in, especially as it refers to media, as in your article?
My background has been a blend of business and technology, and then just from that, because I work in a very male-dominated industry. So, I've always been very aware of how women are portrayed, and that, in the media, women are the wife, the mother, the nurse, and very rarely do you see them as a boss, right? And it also became impossible to ignore how stereotypes are portraying the stereotype portrayal affects how women are perceived because, again, if you don't show up in life in those motherly roles or the empath roles, sometimes, you're perceived as harsh, or, you even start to perceive yourself as that, unfortunately, because you don't fit the standard mold. I'm really trying to show other women and girls that, there is in fact no mold, and we need to start challenging those norms.
I already talked a little bit about your background and personal experiences. So I guess my question would be, how did those influence your approach to studying or more so researching women's portrayal in the media? And like you said, kind of being an advocate for women.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you step into a leadership role as a woman, there is so few examples. And so you're really kind of trying to navigate, use the male model that is portrayed as a leader, but make it my own. And, it sometimes takes a very creative approach because as a woman and being taught from a young age, we're princesses and nurses and teachers, right? So we naturally are more empathic, I think, most of us. And so it's how do I bridge the gap between that role and stereotype and those feelings and the nurturing as a woman in a leadership role, and how do I make that mine? Because there aren't enough examples that kind of show, and a lot of the examples, unfortunately, that we see are very bad examples. And often, unfortunately, when I show up, I'm the only woman in the room. So when people assume, I've had multiple occasions where, I've showed up with a group of guys to a meeting with a bunch of generals, and it's automatically assumed I'm their assistant. But I'm the one who I built the entire division that, makes millions of dollars a year all on my own. And they were all junior project managers. So I mean, some of those things, you don't realize how deep the stereotype goes until it's there staring you in the face when you are introduced to a group of, other executives, and, the men all shake each other's hand, but they don't shake yours. I've had that happen too. So, those types of experience have made me very hyper aware that it's vital not only to show up, even if you yourself don't feel like you fit the mold, but be authentic so that other women can also see authentic women showing up daily, right? And so it's especially important if you're in a leadership position.
That's wonderful. After reading your article, you said that women's portrayal in the media has evolved over the years, but still has a long way to go. So, how accurate would you say women's roles in the media are today, both in fictional stories and occupational roles, like women in politics, reporters? How are they perceived today?
I think we are seeing more women in the media. Unfortunately, I think while we have made some progress, you have some very good examples. Let's take politics, for instance. You have, Michelle Obama, who is a great example of what a woman in a leadership position personifies: the grace, and intelligence and decorum. And unfortunately, we still fall into a lot of tropes like, women are overly sexualized, you're emotionally unstable, or power hungry. And so then you're a bitch because you're power hungry, right? If you are at all, wanting to, or driven and looking for advancement in your career, you're seen as, overly ambitious, and, the same things that you would, men personify, the words that we use for women versus men, but doing the exact same thing, are completely different. And so when you talk about roles like news and politics, women are still criticized way more for their appearance than they are for the ideas that they're projecting. They're overly criticized that they're not friendly enough, we're not smart enough, not pretty enough, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? I think that's part of like stepping into your own and having self-confidence that, hey, what I have to say as a woman and a leader is actually important. It's important for you guys to see other women showing up and being successful. It's important for us to show up in all areas. I've been a huge advocate for years for women in trades, because we do a lot of work in construction. The vast majority of my team are men, right? And I see very few women showing up to even interview for a job in trades. But yet women are perfectly capable of swinging a hammer and doing all of the jobs that these guys are doing. And I'm proof of that because I started in the field. I didn't just arrive in an executive position. I worked my way up from the bottom, right? And so we need to be out front showing people, other women and girls, that you can do this. You can do it with grace, you can do it with empathy, and you can be a phenomenal leader. But if not enough women are showing up to meetings like this and showing up in the media and proving, the social proof that that exists, then I think we will continue to make very few strides forward.
So talking about the woman representation in the media, I heard you talking about your experience of like present in the room with a bunch of gentlemen, but they never like see your presence
Yeah.
in the room. So yeah, I also like there is one example that I saw in the movie recently. It's just exactly the same thing that you experienced. So yeah, the movie name the 6888.
Mhm.
Yes, I'm not sure if you watched that, but like so it's a group of women, a black woman in the war field, and they are trying to help delivering mails back and forth
Mhm.
at the front line.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when she present in the room with a bunch of officers, they never shake her hand or like show respect to her.
And that was World War II, right?
Yes,
That
yes,
was what, almost 60 years, 80 years ago? World War II
yes.
was 80 years ago,
Yeah,
and
around
still
that
today
time.
that happens.
Yes.
So, you know, the unfortunate part is that still happens in today's day and age. And how many of us heard that story while we were learning about World War II in the history books?
Absolutely.
That
Uh-huh.
So, since the media keep reinforcing those harmful stereotypes about women,
Yeah.
do you what like how do you think about this portrayal of women have influence on the public attitude toward or the social behavior toward women nowadays?
I think we're becoming very polarized, especially with today's media and what's going on politically in the reversal of some of the things that I think were put into place, regardless of what your political affiliation is. You know, there are certain guardrails put in place to protect women and people of other nationalities and, you know, people who are disabled and, you know, this whole rollback of DEI related things. And removal of all stories, let's say, of women or celebrating women. Unfortunately, we've, you know, the political landscape and this, the changes towards very conservative patriarchal, I guess, ideals, I think is probably going to set us back even further than where we are and make all of your all's ability to succeed in where you want to go even more difficult.
All right, and then I think we have one more question to wrap up.
I know you've mentioned how you've observed like women's stereotypes in modern media and like how they've changed and stuff. However, do you have you noticed like these stereotypes in modern media and maybe also in entertainment? Do you think they've evolved over the years? Like maybe do you see an increase or a decrease? And what impact do you think these portrayals are like having on the audience's perceptions, especially in like entertainment, on like women now?
So let's take an example of like Pamela Anderson. And you guys may be too young to have grown up with Pamela Anderson, was kind of that stereotypical blonde bombshell. But if you fast forward to today, Pamela Anderson is a very different person. She's really come into her own. And she actually has, I think, a newsletter on Substack now, if I remember correctly, where she talks a lot about like the change and who she is as a person and really stepping into her own. And so I think in that way, media is evolving because I think it's taking very strong women who, as they're aging, are coming into the realization that maybe these stereotypes that they themselves bought into and portrayed don't give the full picture of who they are in reality. And that, you know, they are a much more well-rounded person than the image that the media portrayed them as. And unfortunately, to their detriment and all of our detriment, that we perceived people based on the stereotype, you know, everyone would have just assumed that Pamela Anderson, being this blonde bombshell, was a ditz, right? Because that's our assumption. There must be nothing between here. But the reality is she's actually a very smart person and has a lot of really interesting things to say. But because we buy into the stereotypes that we see on media, we often then don't get to know the full person. And I think that that's unfortunate because we allow the image of people, we allow the things that we see in the media to immediately make snap judgments instead of actually thinking for ourselves and digging through the layers of what is going on beyond what we perceive initially. We're taught from a very early age to compare and contrast things, to put things in buckets, right? To categorize things. But the reality is that, you know, nothing is often as in its complexity as you see it, right? At first value, at first glance, we often make some snap judgments. And I think it's to our benefit if you can get beyond that initial snap judgment of seeing something that you see in the media or the way someone is portrayed and dig a little bit deeper beyond the obvious to find out what's really going on, because I think you get a much richer understanding of the world if you're able to do that.
And luckily, we do have a lot of great role models now
Good.
in the media as well.
Yeah,
So
there are a lot more today than there used to
we
be.
have come a long way.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, do you think that it will ever change? How do you think it can happen?
I think it's going to take time and a lot of work, but it also is going to take people who are more like Michelle Obama showing up